Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is Discerning What is True. I'm going to be reading a particular book by Phil Langdon. Um, Recently bought this book, and this is what it looks like from the outside. And I'll read what is said on the back cover here. It says, P.G. Langdon, that's Phil Langdon, is the author of Esoteric Studies and Mysticism, focusing on the metaphysics and philosophy of Ascension, otherwise known as salvation in Christianity. The Ascension Code is a graphic novel designed to succinctly describe the discrete philosophy of ancient metaphysics and ascension in a modern scientific context, answering the question, how do I ascend? End quote. Using the pattern of the classic three-act drama, the author takes us on a journey into the language of the mystic, or mystical, I should say, tree of life, as it applies to the process of metaphysics and modern cosmology, and leads inevitably to the transformation of a rational human being into the divine realm of angels. On the appendix back here, he does make some other things here. I wanted to share this too before I get into the chapter here. He talks about certain reading lists here. So here's the general one. He says philosophy should look into sacred geometry, also in Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and Taoism. In the area of physics, he speaks about applied maps, meaning calculus method, and in standard physics models by Roger Penrose. He's mentioned psychology, doing with Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. Other books he recommends or suggested are Bruce Lee, Artists of Life, Bhagavad Gita, I should say, Robert Lawler, Lawlor, which is the book that he wrote, Sacred Geometry, Thames and Hudson by Kabbalah, Rudy Rucker, The Fourth Dimension and How to Get There, Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces, Albert Einstein, The Special Theory of Relativity, and Walter Russell, A New Concept of the Universe. And there are websites here. He also represents meru.org and also authoryoung.com. This is what the book looks like. And so we're going to go into this particular works tonight. We'll probably just go through, like I said, that part, the forward here, and also the area, what we call Chapter One. So this work stands on the shoulder of giants, among the likes of the Nobel Prize winner Roger Penrose of Cambridge University and Stan Tennant of the Meru Foundation. One of the giants is also Arthur Young, the inventor of the Bell helicopter. Arthur was a logical engineer and inventor who spent his later life developing a unified logical theory of natural process. Such a process is any event that changes one thing, that is an input, into something else being an output, like a function of expression involving a variable quantity in mathematics. According to the online Wikipedia entry on process theory, we find that, quote, a process theory is a system of ideas that explains how an entity changes and develops. Process theories are often contrasted with variance theories. That is, systems of ideas that explain the variance in a dependent variable based on one or more independent variables. In other words, something coming in and making changes to something, like, for example, For example, like we would say maybe an engine, so to speak. You have these variables coming in that allows that engine to run. Well, you have to have belts for that. You have to have a motor. You have to have an alternator. You have to have all these things in order for it to be working. You see, that is a system of ideas that explain the variance of a dependent variable based on one or more independent variables. All right. While process theories focuses on how something happens, variance theories focus on why something happens. Example of process theories include evolution by natural selection, control, continental drift, and the nitrogen cycle, end quote. Process theories came in four common archetypes. Evolutionary process theories explain change in a population through variation, selection, and retention, much like biological evolution. In a dialectic process theory, quote, stability and change are explained by reference to the balance of power between opposing entities, almost like a magnet to a piece of steel, end quote. In a teleological process theory, a agent, quote, constructs envisioned end state, takes action to reach it, and monitors the progress, end quote. In a life cycle process theory, that is, quote, the trajectory to the final end state is prefigured and requires a particular historical sequence of events. That is, change always conforms to the same series of activities, stages, phases, like a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. In Arthur's view, that is Arthur Young, the natural process of energy and order in nature, I should say, follow the life cycle process that seem to have a meaningful progression in a sequence of increasingly complex systems. Arthur came close to connecting the two ends of the natural process, but could not imagine the bizarre nature of how the loop is closed. This work is an attempt to close that Mobius-type loop by showing how Arthur's concept is far reaching than what he may himself have suspected. We could say this work is a search for meaning in a meaningless society or universe where death and entropy renders everything apparently meaningless in looking at the order in the cosmos. We might want to stick to explaining the physical patterns without looking beyond to anything divine. Likewise, a book of logic usually cannot include the notion of a God, any rational or technical discourse concerning impersonal reality we find ourselves in. Such things are reserved for religious books. However, if we focus too much on the fish, we will miss the concept of the fishing rod. To lack of insight, it is like a finger pointing to the moon. If we concentrate on the finger, we will miss all the heavenly glory. So, chapter 1 here is simply called The Great Work. Human life is a drama comparable to a three-act play. And this is truly of all plays, and basically what we call movies today. We are born, crawl around on four legs, grow to walk on two legs, and reach old age on three legs with the aid of a stick before passing away. Likewise, the arc of the sun, ARC that is, as an allegory for human life. Life is a newborn baby at sunrise, raised and exalted at midday at its highest point in the sky, to mature until sunset in old age. So goes the ancient view of the human being, apparently spoken as a riddle by the Sphinx at Giza, to passing travelers, to highlight the importance of process and its connection to metaphysics. Any process is an event that changes one thing, initial condition, into something else. A after or post condition, that is. Like a function in mathematics that changes an input number into a different output number. or a personal, quote, great work, that is, end quote, that reaches towards the fullness of understanding reality from a starting point of ignorance. The idea of process, in this sense, is a universal principle applicable across a vast range of subjects and situations. This is especially true when we consider that every aspect of existence, whether personal, imagination, or real world, is in a state of permanent change or process, no matter what size or how slow. Logic dictates we will always find the underlying and invisible truth of something when we simply look at what there is and what it does. By studying the real world, we discover over time the deeper logical truths concerning its secrets that are not obvious at first glance. Distinct issues must coincide to form a continuous picture of reality that makes verifiable sense overall, no matter how deep it goes. We only need to look around in the natural world to see a multitude of similar patterns, some which transcend scale and size in their fractional life, repeating genomic expansion to see the potential for an unifying principle. And he'll show this here. Let me get to this book here and show it kind of, the whole idea here, right here. You see this, how a shell and how the patterns are on everything, what we call, I guess we call this somewhat geometric. We all know that a tree and the seeds it produces are a testament to the original seed that created them, proving its prior existence by reproduction. A acorn will always make more acorns in a cycle, or what we call a loop pattern, where one seed becomes many through the function of the oak tree. Relaying the seed with the ground by planting it is the primary function or catalyst for their unification as the tree, which then becomes the function that turns the original seed into many more. This natural process of transformation, expansion, and accumulative abundance relays the plant's discreteness as a seed at either end of its own continuity. I'm sorry, not continuity, continuality. In this case, just as we find in a three-act drama, the two natures of a discrete seed and a continuous ground are introduced in the first act as a set of discrete points, one to represent the seed and 2 points apart as a line for the outer distinction or ground in which the seed is planted. The figure for the second act is the sequence, shows a triangle of the same 3 original points, but now unified as the tree. Finally, the relationship resolves into the truth that connects them, producing a 4th point, that is, a new seed, having both of its parent qualities at once. And so he brings it down into what I call simply this way. He shows it. So there's 3 acts here. You can see it here. And you have what we call in a movie or a play, you have what I call Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Act 1 will represent the players or the characters in the play. Act 2 will reveal what we call the relationships that are going on within the players or actors. And Act 3 is the bringing back of what I call unification. So a seed begets what we call a tree. And when the tree produces what it does, it produces more seeds or acorns. That's how it does. That's how the relationship works. And we have the same thing with a pyramid. We have a seed at the very top. We have a line which goes to 2 seeds, or 2 points, I should say, which is the ground. And then what happens, the tree becomes 3 points. When we draw the line from one area to the ground to the seed on the left side, and then another line to the seed from the right side, we have a triangle. And with that, in order to do that, you have to quote circle, square to circle in order to be able to get a pyramid. And that's how you develop a pyramid, because you draw the lines, one point to the left, to the right, and you do this, and it becomes just the lines. But then you put the points here, and then you put the center, which is the new seed, in the middle. And so now you have 4 seeds, but it's not a square, you see. It is a pyramid. The new seed goes to what we call, like we look here at my hand, is like you have 1, 2, 3, but the one is actually, the top ones up here is actually representing the new seed. And this is how we are able at that point to create a pyramid. You see, he develops. So I'll go on and explain some more here. A simple geometric allegory for the same expansion starts with a single point, like a seed, like he says. That expands through the process of addition and accumulation. This is part what we call addition and accumulation, is what you learn in life, you see. Like a tree producing a potential limitless numbers of copies of the original seed, like the 4th point of the discrete tree archetype. The geometry of this process is the simple expansion of polygons that naturally starts with a single point, expanding to 2, then 3, and then adding points at infinity. And so we can start with a point. We can do 2 points, making a line. 3 becomes suddenly now a triangle. 4 equally lines are a square. The 5 is the polygram. I think it's called a polygram. Hopefully, no, not a pentagram. The 6 I can't remember here, so you have to beg. But anyway, a hexagon, I think it is, and on all the way, okay, to infinity. At the numbers of points increase to infinity, the limits of the sequence becomes a circle, you see. And that's the symbol of the infinity, you see. Which is also represented on this card here. That is the symbol right there with the tarot list, is infinity. You see at the very top of the guy's head, which is everlasting life. Of course, to find the center is okay. We do. However, it is the infinite concept. The circle represents that is important, since we are conceptually defining the center of infinity itself, which naturally has no center, you see, being continuous, limitless, timeless, ineffable, and undefined. The appropriate allegory and means to accomplish this task is known in geometry as squaring the circle, being technically impossible to complete algebraically with the classic restrictions of using only compass and a straight edge. The philosophy of making a square from a circle stands as the appropriate symbolic allegory of defining the impossible center of infinity. The circle as the infinite is recast as a measurable square with the same circumference as the circle to guarantee the correspondence of a center. The square esoteric represents the fourfold nature of the natural world, while the circle represents an effectively unmeasured spirit, you see. Once the square is defined, its center is geometrically implied by crossing opposite corners, shown in the left below. The center of the circle is defined in the process and by inference, I should say, a definite center in infinite continuity, shown on the right in a discrete point surrounded by a continuous circle. So it's just simply this way. When you put a square, you're able to find the center of the circle. You see, you have what I call a cross reference like this, running from the left to the right to the angle, and then running to another part of the angle, and then you get the point where the center should be at. That's how you find it. you see. And apparently this would be, the Egyptians were able to do this because they demonstrated that much with their pyramids, you see. Like any event or story that was the beginning, that has a beginning, a middle, and end. Square in the circle is a simple circuit from a point to a circle and back to a point again. Defining the same three-act dramatic event as a seed-making process, but is purely philosophical, that is, sacred, geometric terms. It is the completion of the impossible task of finding a center to the infinite by means of the divinely inspired human intellect. That is highlighted by what we call in Da Vinci's Virtuous Man in the square circle. Only a divine inspired person can achieve the level of reasoning that defines the new seed of metaphysics. I'll say that again because it's very important. Only a divinely inspired person can achieve the level of reasoning that defines the new seed of metaphysics. A complete square circle, then an angel horn or trumpet. So let me go here and show you what he gives it the name, which the Bible also uses the name, which is, let me get to it here. Gabriel's horn. Zero to infinity. Okay. And then he has another picture over here. If I can, it's kind of hard to go because what they call over here is a unit square circle. And this one over here with Gabriel's horn is a square circle content. So it starts out as a zero and it becomes infinity. It just continues on and on and on. The nature of the objective world is easily provable with weights and measures. Metaphysics is beyond physics. In contrast, and incorporates the process that reaches towards the perfection of divine ideal philosophy from the ground of experience. In other words, the more experience we get, the more we begin to understand things deeper philosophically, you see. That's why we go to school. That's why we go to college. And if we don't go that far, we will go and get a master's degree, such and such. And if not that, we'll get a PhD, you see. More like raising our head above the trees of a forest to verify the misty mountain archetype in the distance, an allegory for the everlasting pinnacle of truth that we must reach to know the fullness of our own range and become masters of ourselves. Again, you give an illustration of the drama, which will be simply as Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Introduce characters in Act 1, Act 2, relate them. 3 is to unify them. Okay. The next section is called metaphysics, which you simply will show the lines, the three points, and you draw a line, and draw a line to all of it, and it becomes a triangle. You see. And what it does, it also, let me get something here really quick here, make it a little bit easier for you to see. It is about relating. It's a relating network. You have 3 points, okay, and the line goes to each one because now you have a triangle. And then the last part is what we call a unified, or what we call a seed, a union of seed. You see. Well, that's also illustrated with the philosophy. So philosophy would simply be the discrete. That would be the point. And then after that, we have the contiguous, meaning the circle. And then we would have the union with the point inside of the circle. That's philosophy. Extrapolating to the infinite extremes of both the idea of discrete point and its surrounding continuity gives a pointed singularity and an infinite expansion beyond measure as the greatest distinction that can have. The only difference between them at this extremes as common singular entities is that the point has no hole, whereas the circle distinctly highlights a gaping or gapping hole. The three-act sequence of squaring the circle in these terms becomes a, quote, discrete singularity followed by a continuous or infinite whole, H-O-L-E, completed by consciously defining a center for the whole and establishing a relationship between the two streams of discreteness and continuity. This is philosophy, after all. The center circle is a continuous discrete unit, like a seed that contains the potential of its own continuity. The square circle is now effectively 2 points in a relationship where the full circle completes their range of potential. By taking any point on the circumference, we can draw a circle with the same radius and produce two circles interlocking at their respectively centers. This geometric form is known as the vesicus piscis, meaning fish bladder in Latin. So it's just two circles that are basically this, and what it does simply is, again, you're starting out the seeds with Act 1, 2 again with the relationship, and 3 is resolution. You see, we're the players. You see, and then you have 1 point and a circle, and then you simply bring the points into what I would call the vesicus piscis, and then you have what I call a geometric deal here, which is considered the flower of life, which is what life is about. That's how it is, that we're able to see that now. But that would not have been true, 100 to 200 years ago. The form of the vesica inherently contains a double square, you see, whose internal geometry produces the universal growth proportion relating to the concept of universal creation and order known as the golden section, or dub phi. I'm trying to find it there. Yeah, you'll see it here. If you can see it here, my thing here. This is right here and down here. And then what we do is he draws these points over here, connecting with bringing the line straight over. So you have like a rectangle. And then what you do simply is you draw those points to the top, to the other top, bottom, I should say. And then you have a rectangle. And then you can draw the one to the angle, to a certain angle. And eventually you can almost make it like a door, so to speak. As a graphic metaphor of creation, the vesicus begins a process of self-replication and multiplication that fulfills its range by expanding into the flower of life, a threefold accumulation resulting in a hexagonic array, filling all spatial potential in its 2 dimensions, suggesting a natural limit has been reached, just as we find in defining the unit square circle. So we have the illustration on one side here on the left simply is the tree archetype, and on the other side we call it sacred geometry. So we have what we call a square circle. You start out first with a seed, and the sacred geometry is a dot with a circle around it. You have 2 lines, and what we call the next side on the tree archetype is 2 lines, not 2 lines, 1 line with 2 points. That develops in what we call vesicus piscis in sacred geometry. Continue on, we have the seed of life, which means simply is eventually we're going to have the opportunity creating a triangle at first, and then going on to the seed of life, which is the multiple deals with the vesicus piscis overlay. And this is how life goes in that world, so to speak, what we call sacred geometry. And there is a point. Sacred geometry is found in most church windows. If you go to an older church, many windows, maybe a Gothic type of church or whatever, but an older church that is, they will have sacred geometry in their windows. You might want to observe that. We always tend to take, what is this all about? because I never knew understood that myself. What's this all about? Why is he? And there was so something about Jesus there, but there would be also other things also to basically get you to think here. Sacred geometry is as a potential philosophy of reality. Gives us circles and squares or spheres and cubes. It's as the geometric archetypes of form and structure. In other words, we can't see these things at first, but they create a form and structure, how they stay together. Manifest fullness is square, cubic, and discrete, whereas spiritual fullness, as the opposite, is circular. You hear that? So again, I'm going to say the manifest fullness is square, cubic, and discrete, whereas spiritual fullness, as the opposite, is circular, spherical, and continuous. That's what I mean by the infinity sign here on the tarot cards. Together as the square circle, they represent the greatest application of the yin-yang relationship between what is finite or discrete and what is infinite and continuous. Realized in Da Vinci's Vitruvian man as an ascended divine being in the crucified or T pose. The letter T is famously the last letter of the sacred alphabet, denoting full completion. So again, we won't go into this thing here, but it's we've already explained that, so we won't go into more of that. So we continue. Our ideas are limitless, of course, and somewhere in that limitless range is the idea of perfection. Recognizing that perfection must exist as well. If it tops the range of existence somewhere, somehow we can set about finding out what it is and what it means in real terms. We can formulate a plan when we have a sense of what and where it might be found, to then set about the task of finding it by putting our thoughts into action. When an idea of what to do or make, in other words, you have to have a dream, you have to have a concept of something before you actually even start the project, you see. We can begin the creative process by formulating how to implement the idea and get a successful result. When we have a good sense of how to accomplish our new planned idea, we then set about the physical task of creating it with required action. That's the same thing with ideas when you build a car, same thing, motor, same thing, all those things of that nature long ago. Someone thinking of some idea in their head and being able to manifest that, be able to quote unquote create it. Fortunately, the idea to action sequence that seeks to know perfection is so well trodden by humanity that it has the grand title of the great work. The work is great because finding perfection in God as the singular metaphysical root of existence generates our salvation from the automatic nature of reality, as well as the cause of our own creation. It closes the loop for us personally, allowing us to know the deepest and most sought after unknown beyond our personal point of view. In other words, you move away from your own point of view because and most of us have been wrongly told about everything in our lives, just about everywhere. So it's a pilgrimage. You're going after something. It's actually like a trailblazer. You know, in order for you to get sort of point A to point B or whatever, you got to go through a path, so to speak. And so, like we say, in a jungle or in a forest, you have to make a trail. You have to be what I call a trailblazer, so to speak. After I see where we're at here. So you know the deepest and most sought after unknown beyond our personal point of view, a greater self-knowledge and wisdom. Okay, so you need to discover what's about you. You know, that's what you need to do. You need to find out why you're here. What is your purpose here? You see. No, it's not about making money. It's about finding out who you really are. You see. Money is just a product such and such to keep you alive in order for you to eat. But the point simply is the greater one is simply is to find out where you came from, what are you about, and why do I have these certain types of things in my head, and wisdom, you see. Before we can align ourselves with the perfectional philosophy as the truth within, for that is where it manifests. We need to fathom the patterns of the objective world of energy, as well as the subjective world of our own psyche. Okay, a notorious dangerous territory with its tangle of personal biases, you betcha, and potential lack of objective logic. See, we think we always right about everything. You see, we have this what we call a personality, but it's based a lot of it somewhat on ego, and we think we don't do anything wrong, and we think we know everything, when in reality we don't know anything. You see, prior to alignment with objective truth, that is objective, not subjective, not your viewpoint, but objective. Okay, like God. God is objective. In this sense, the natural world is our firm teacher, eventually becoming a testament in our awareness to the hidden truth behind it. The great work, however, is not simply the study of physical reality. It is the way we appreciate our studies that counts. For instance, if we give a Shakespeare play to a monkey, they will eventually rip the pages out and wipe their behinds with them. Give the same play to a human, and the results can be similar until we encounter an intelligent one who can appreciate the works and hopefully what they mean. You see, that's when you become what we call, you become wiser. You see, anyone can put something down. You see, make fun of it, whatever, big deal. You need to bring it. It's like the bread of life. Bring it into your life. The point is to help transform a shallow, simplistic view into a deeper one, to share the wisdom of the writer and convey the sense of depth, and discernment required. It is like a finger pointing to the moon. If we concentrate on the finger, we will miss all the heavenly glory. Those who have understood and become wise sages in the past would have recorded or coded their insights in a variety of ways to keep the knowledge alive, such as in classical stories or graphic recorded in the form of art and architecture. See, there were those who do this. They're trying to pass on something to you. You see, even in the layout and design of a sacred building, humanity has been around long enough to have already standardized the understanding of philosophical perfection. In the square circle, among the churches and temples of the world, the one that most succinctly approaches the true act of squaring the circle as the archetype for spiritual transcendence is the pyramid form. So he gives an illustration here of a pyramid. A pyramid is like a diamond at the top. You have to have clay. You have to have what they call a capstone. You have to have bricks in order to create a pyramid. And yes, it's four-sided, but it becomes triangle at the very top, you see, point. With that, we have understanding. So we have one side here, we have information, and we bring that information to comparison at the bottom. Okay, so we have the first information. The next thing we have is comparison in our own minds. Then that leads to what we call proportion. So we're on the other side here of the triangle, of the square, that is. And then the last part is measure. Okay. So understanding is simply information that is compared. And with that, you be able to purport, that is proportions that you can then measure it. And that brings what we call understanding. A pyramid is a philosophical and allegory building, primarily not a practical one for living in, that is, as the main architectural allegory for the square circle. The basics of a pyramid is naturally a perfect square, whose center must coincide and remain vertically true all the way up to the singular point at the top. Equivalently, if our evaluations are true in life, we build a mental picture of reality that should rise as a pyramid goes straight and true, arriving at its destination in a single point of full understanding. In other words, what is your purpose here on this planet? What is the point of living here, you see? As we live, we make comparisons with the information we've gained from experience, the way things are, and allegorically make bricks from clay. In other words, you have to have clay in order to create bricks. In order to have clay, you have to have sand and water. If you get to the bottom part, in order to do that, you see, arranging the accumulation of our bricks, each representing a filtered and established piece of information concerning objective reality. What you're looking for is not subjective. You're not looking for biased information here. You're looking for objective reality. Not what someone else says, but for yourself. You see, you're looking for objective truth here, not subjective truth. We make a mental pyramid of accumulated, reliable knowledge that rises and guides us to the singular truth by logical deduction and divinely inspired philosophical exploration. Truth is forever true. You see, it doesn't matter. True is true. Truth is always going to be true. It's not going to be false. Okay? By definition, and as such, is forever robust. In other words, it stands out. It's robust. It's on a solid foundation, you see. Truth is foundational, you see. If your society is based on falsehood, it will never stand. It will crumble. By its very nature and definition, truth must be rooted in a single idea that is set in stone, like a pyramid or a sword. You can learn nothing of value without it. If truth was based on more than one idea, there would be duality or conflict, and either only one is true or both are wrong. As such, the truth is guaranteed to be one thing only. It is going to be fixed. It's going to be severe. And it is indifferent. It doesn't give a damn about your opinions, about what you think you know. It is not going to be biased. Truth is not biased, you see. It is like a double-edged sword that will metaphorically cut the one who wields it as easily as an opponent. In other words, the one who wheels it out and does it all this crazy is so heavy that he actually could cut his own arm out if he doesn't take care of what he's doing in front of it without cutting themselves. It is by gaining the true understanding that leads to deep spiritual wisdom from critical thinking and self-honesty. Yes, you got to be critical. You got to ask yourself, okay, you got to criticize things. When you see something that's not right, it's not congruent, then it's, guess what? It doesn't stand, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold water. And being self-honesty about your own self, you see. Admitting that basically in a lot of ways we don't know a damn thing, you see. I don't know, especially. It's not what someone else thinks. You almost, in a lot of ways, experience is a testimony of basically what truth is. Your life is going to be a testimony of what truth is. You see, and if it's not a testimony what you've gone through from day one to such and such, and when you're a child and all the way up to 25, 30, and you get older, you're going to learn something. You see, the name of the sword is Excalibur, which is a movie that was done long ago, and has a history of variations in northwestern Europe, but is thought to come from the Old Welsh. And I can't pronounce this, so I'm going to say C-A-L-E-D-F-W, witch, W-I-C-H, where Cal, C-A-L-E-D, means hard, and B-W-I-C-H, I don't know, which means cleft or breach. In Latin, it is cumbersome from, I'm going to spell these words because I don't know how to pronounce them, C-A-L-I-B-U-R-N-U-S, from C-H-A-L-Y-B-S, meaning steel. which of course is hard. You notice how they make steel these days. In the past, you have to have a lot of fire and you have to have a lot of heat in order to make it hard. You get all the impurities out of it in order for it to be strong. Whatever the true origin of the name, the most important thing is that it represents the the difference of the cold, hard truth, which cannot be changed to suit our personal limited bias and viewpoint. It will not. It can't stand. You see, many people today believe in all kinds of bullshit, you see. But guess what? It doesn't hold an ounce of weight. It's not true. You see, that's why we call it bias. It's your own personal opinion, but opinion don't mean shit. You see, that's your own bias opinion. Guess what? See if that'll fly. See if your boat will hold that. You see, because guess what? Life will treat you that way, and it'll teach you a big lesson. You see, about that. With your own bias opinions and your own personality, thinking you know it all, you're not going to learn anything. So you need to understand simply is if you have that attitude and being someone you think you know it all, you'll never learn anything. And many young people today do that. In reality, they don't know anything. At least the first premise was understanding simply, I don't understand anything, and I need to get understanding from someone. See, that's about what your life is supposed to be about. And if you pursue it to the essence, you will eventually find it, you see. Since reality is simple but has the greatest depth, the method of instruction concerning the deepest nature is supposed to be fulfilled by teachers of myth and religion, involving three layers. Mythical myths are also revealing truth. So when you think myth, you think, oh, that's just something. No, it's a way the quote unquote teachers long ago would use myths in order to help the student learn, you see. It's all about ritual and how things are done and mystical. At the mythical level, a religion contains stories that are constructed to convey the greater wisdom of the human condition through the allegory of a hero fighting evil. That's almost all your three-act plays are based upon that premise right there. It's about dealing with evil. And that's what all these stories everywhere in the past is about that. That is your calling, so to speak. At the level of ritual practices and constructed to convey meditations on aspects of divine nature through subjects such as geometry or epistemology that state with the individual as a learning experience that can relate to and draw from. Drawing water, you see, for yourself. This is about you, not for anybody else. This is your life. This is your chance to learn, you see. It's not someone else. You're not here to perform for anybody else. You're here to find out about who you are, why you're here. Obviously, most people think they're here to earn money. Well, that's fine. Yes, we're here to earn money, but that is not the primitive reason why we're here. That's only for you to stay alive and have food on the table and have a shelter. That's the premise. But that doesn't get you the truth. That's just a basic need. But that's not true, you see. The mystical layer is the final level, where the divine is experienced directly by the individual from the training afforded by the myth and practice of their personal study. Thus, every religion is supposed to bring each person into direct contact and union with God. The truth of our own existence, such that a go-between is no longer needed. And the guru or master teacher gives way to the truth itself in the student's appreciation. This final level is the reason for the previous two, allowing the individual to slowly come into sync with the divine by listening, reflecting, and meditating on each new understanding, slowly gaining the understanding that leads to the fullness of self-awareness. A writer of mysticism and cosmic awareness called Iona Miller explains the stages of unification. The mystical marriage has 7 basic stages. First is called the quest. 2, the awakening of love. 3, the attainment of knowledge. 4, detachment. 5, unification or blending. 6, annihilation. And 7 is divine consummation. The nature of becoming selfless is the unquantifiable part of the great work that comes as a natural consequence of doing the work through our own forms of therapy and scientific learning. Building our own inner understanding is seemingly purely mechanical as a process, in contrast, and therefore quantifiable. It is only when we act out of care for the greater being as a result of our gained understanding that we prove our worth is compassion for others. With deep and sure understanding, we naturally invite the divine from within. This change in attitude is the sure sign that our learning is having an effect, attracting our own highest self to us in the process. Like attracts like. Effectively, doing the great work is a question of awareness, analyze oneself, and having access to the truth concerning the natural world in the first place. In the absence of teachers, we are left with our own experience of the natural world to draw information from, even though ideally a teacher could be sought by the individual, which was a long time ago is called the mystery schools. How will they know who is good and who is not as a source of information? This brings us to the issue of knowing for ourselves through our own experience. As Bruce Lee once said, the only help is self-help. End quote. Bruce Lee's statement emphasizes the point of becoming sure from our own thinking and experience. In other words, you're building your own pyramid within yourself, since we can only prove the truth to ourselves, correct? Ultimately, a teacher will only ever be a guide. So there must be an internal dialogue where the individual can question issues relative to their current understanding. As time goes on, greater insight is gained through comparisons until we reach the top of our inner pyramid or mountain. When you're on a mountain here, you can see everything. When you're at the very top, you can see all things. You can see the valleys, you can see the rivers, the water, you can see the trees, such and such, and see how far you're up. You see, and that's the highest part of who you are, which is your head. It's not your feet, you see. All roads lead to the truth eventually, as the inevitable reality we discover slowly through time and experience. Since truth is instant, always and forever, we simply digest it in bits as we go along, like eating according to our own needs until we find our own fullness. Along the way, of course, we experience our own physical and psychological growth, no matter what comes our way to challenge our developing personal identity. According to the famous psychologist Carl Jung, everyone falls into a psychological category of personality types, of which there are 12, 12 different personalities. Well, let's see, there were 12 disciples, wasn't it? There are 12 astrological signs, you see. And everyone seeks one of 4 general goals in life. Whether Jung was reworking mysticism or not, his 4 personality orientation match the 4 world sequence in the mystical archetype, starting with the yearning for paradise, or epitomized by the word, or by freedom, or corresponding with the first world of imagination. The rest correspond very neatly. Connecting to other people, for instance, is creating a network of acquaintances. Providing order and structure obviously falls into the formation category. And finally, action is the work of a person who makes things happen in their life. The four modes characterized by Jung are freedom. He would say simply yearning for paradise, and he would write the word emanation. The next one would be social, connecting to others, which is creation. The third one is called order, providing structure to the world, the formation. And four, ego, leaving a mark on the world, meaning action. And corresponding with every human being, regardless of their personality type, the psyche classically has four modes of operation. They are, namely, intuition, emotion, intellect, and physical senses. When it comes to the body, we can assign these same modes uniquely to the various centers of the body, which can be split into four zones, namely sensuality at the groin, desire at the navel, emotion at the heart, and intellect in the head. In the old Hindu system of gunas, Gunas, we find the same correspondence shortened to just three attributes, where I won't pronounce this word, but Sattva is the intellect. Rajas is the emotional content that includes desire. And tamas refers to sensual living in conjunction with desire, as if the navel is a point of union between the heart, emotion, and reproducing sensual centers. So they turn it down to three here. And we would say simply there's what we call intellect, desire, genre, and one other one here. Let's see if I can get this thing to work well. No, I'm sorry. There's senses, intellect, emotion, and desire, and senses. They would say simply the word Sattva and the gunas in a yellow. They use the color red. Rajas and the blue is I can't see it here. I'm sorry. It's not coming up clearly. Let's see. Hold on a second. Quite there. Bill's got, yeah. Well, look, it's just three. I can't see the other one here. If I find it, I'll tell you about it here. Maybe it's a little different. My color, my computer's not doing so well. Each mode of living has its own consequences over time. For instance, living in Sattva, spending more time with philosophy and contemplation, means we advance closer to objective truth and divinity, because we can eventually see through our own faults and our ego sensitivities, identifying more with our highest aspects and separating ourselves from our lower nature over time. Living for the emotions, which is rajas, leads us no closer to the goal of truth, and we stay the same person. So in other words, if you stick in the emotional set, you're not really going to go far. Without the transforming philosophy. The worst of these, of course, is tamas, Tamas, or sensual living. By engaging too much in this state, we can be left drained and bereft of philosophical understanding to the point of starving our soul of its nourishment, since understanding anything above the common level becomes unnecessary in such a lifestyle. You see, you don't need to know that. This is why people are so lost. They don't understand anything because they've spent all their time in their sensual ways, and when they do that, they're not really actually seeking food for their soul to be nourished. At the other end of the mental spectrum is the issue of mental health and the apparent connection between psychotic How to know psychotic subjective experience. How to see the difference between a person who is genuinely contemplating the depths of reality or a person who is using the intellect as a means of escaping their immediately life and environment. Carl Jung was accused of this, you see. When it comes to the subjective world of the mind and imagination, the sky is the limit without a standard or measuring stick of some kind. The only indication of any standard in these terms and is cross-reference to see if there is any match, M-A-T-C-H, whatsoever. Patterns recognition is a broadly applicable subject. The expectation being a collection of subjective experiences is that there will be no correspondence other than perhaps archetypes imagined differently by each person. However, ancient human tradition paints a very different pattern or picture that tells us it was thought there is a subjective experience shared by all those who elevate themselves with insight and philosophy to a point of truth above the physical level of existence. A unique and recordable experience carried by the esoteric tradition for countless centuries. The human psyche was viewed as having 12 noetic signs. There comes that 12 again. Noetic signs, which are intellectual forces, which attributed were projected onto the night sky as 12 signs of the zodiac. The wheel of the zodiac around the equatorial plane of the earth, accompanied by the rest of the night sky constellations, were used as a storytelling device to record useful ideas associated with human psychology, divinity, and physical world. So the body has, your body has 12 body zodiac here. Let me see if we can find this thing here. Well, basically, it's a little bit different. Hold on a second here. So you have the body zodiac, and we have the 12 head zodiac. You see. And so Aries is to do with the head. Taurus is to do with the throat. The next part would be the Gemini, would be the lungs area and arms. Cancer would be further down. Leo would also be the heart zone. Virgo would be the intestines. Libra would be the intestines. I'm not intestines. The kidneys. The next one would be Scorpio, which would be the sexual organs. The next one would be Sagittarius, would be the thighs. To your knees would be called Capricorn. Aquarius would be the calves and below the knee. And the last would be Pisces, the feet. And we're coming out of Pisces, in fact. So that's similar to what we call the wheel. And I won't go too much more than that. I think people will know that. It's the head zodiac also. Let me go back down here and make it smaller again so I can read this thing. So the zodiac signs and attributes were also applied to the human body from head to foot, as well as the human mind alone. It is a way of dealing with and simplifying self-analysis. Carl Jung corresponded 12 personality types are like mission statements in life, a standardized automated pattern. Each person will feel the need to fulfill this innate mission naturally without noticing that they are in a pattern until it is pointed out. For instance, the jester type will want to entertain others more than anything else. So that's, you see the jester, he's just, that's what he wants to do. He wants to enjoy life. That's all he cares about, and having fun, you see. And let's see where I'm at here. To entertain others more than anything else. Whereas the ruler type, in contrast, will will want to control others more than anything. We may not have a choice when it comes to automatic things like human attraction or personality types, but we do have a choice in what we do about it. If we know our automatic nature, we can work with and override it with conscious efforts and awareness. It is our actions that define us. As a result, leading to self-mastery and self-control when we recognize the more refined nature is ever available to us. For instance, we can use our minds to recall useful information by using it allegorically as a palace with rooms, a mind palace, that is, end quote, where we store useful information by graphically association, as if gathering the bricks to make our own pyramid, which in this case is the palace itself. Recognizing that all four human somatic body centers are necessary to conduct a human life, we learn to work with and understand all of them so we can rise to our highest sense of self-worth. As we find in the allegory of the pyramid archetype, rising to the point of singularity, fusion from a base to four. When the pyramid is built, shy of the capstone, the symbolic nature of capping a pyramid with a single stone mimics our association above the impersonal physics level of the square into the personal zero-dimensional fullness of metaphysics. In so doing, we prove our worth, end quote, or prove our intelligence and our ability to do so and gain the keys to heaven. We transform the cosmic darkness within us as our subconscious content and become divinely aware. We process each our own piece of cosmic material, our body, and spiritualize it by the purest applicable understanding. The alchemists would say, quote, we turn our lead or base metal into gold in the crucible of our lives. And let me explain something else here. It's the last part of this chapter here, which is very key. When I met Phil Langdon, this has been 3 or 4 years ago, he told me there is a symbol which is with the Catholic Church. And he talked about what we call the two keys. One is silver and one is gold. And so the first is when we get to the point of eventually, how do I say it? The best way to say it. You meet God face to face within yourself. That's the first key. Most people stop there. If they get that point, they stop there and they believe that they've accomplished everything in their life. Not so. So the gold key, which it doesn't matter what color here, but the Catholics have actually, they show this artwork here, the two keys. That's at the Vatican. You see, that's a truth here. And when you come to meet God, that's where people stop. And what Phil explained to me very candidly, he was in awe and asked himself, why me? Why did it happen to me? I'm no better than anybody else. I made mistakes, such and such, da da da. I failed, da da da, such and such, in many things, in many areas of my life, da da da. And he basically, as it comes to realization, simply is it's not him. It's just simply God's goodness. But he digs into questions about why did it happen to him. He kept probing within himself, why me, type of thing. And it's to show that you're actually thankful for what God has done for you and his mercy and his grace, you see, when you met God. And it's appreciation of what has happened to you with the first key. The second is to appreciate that and realize it's nothing in you. It's by the goodness of God, you see. So I'm going to stop there. That was the first chapter tonight. I didn't realize it might take as much time as it did, but that's okay. It's truth and it's important. So again, this is a work by Phil Langdon, um, and it's actually, this part is what it calls, and it will go into this as this is part of the two. So I basically maybe overlapped it. Basically, the part when I talk about the silver key and the gold key, and the crown at the very top here, is to do with what we call the second chapter. So I've kind of gotten overrun over it, which is called the keys of heaven, the keys to heaven. And this is what it says: "Be still and know that I am God." Psalms 46:10, which is from the KJV, which is King James Version. So we'll stop there tonight. Appreciate you being here. I hope this makes some sense to you. This is a very serious subject, folks. This is why we're here. There's nothing else. We don't have to prove ourselves to anybody. We just need to search out for the truth. And Phil Langdon has done the work. Like I said, he did this approximately, trying to think of the year, 2015. So it's been, I think, approximately 2014. So it's been, I think, 11 years since he's had that experience. Zen does not do that. Zen is just simply one deal, and it's nothing. I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying this is what, when I say people fall short, they have the experience with God, they have the stillness within them, but they don't go any further. They don't show the appreciation of what has really happened, because basically, in reality, God doesn't have to prove himself to anybody. Okay. It's basically to help man to grow up. And when that happened, Phil recognized this simply is that's what an angel is. I mentioned that many times to people, and people I don't think understand. An angel is one who has come to that point. Okay. He's ascended, you see, which is in your head, you see. That's the highest part of who you are on this planet. This is where all your thinking goes. This is where knowledge is located. This is where your eyesight is located. This is where many glands are located in your head also, you see. Also, the 12 noetic signs are within your head, which would probably be what I call the nerves of your head. So I hope that this will that you will seek deeper things. I don't know if anybody else has done this on this planet. No one. You see, and people say, "Well, then that must mean it's not important." No, it's rare, and that's what all of us are here for. That's the only reason why we're here, to make heaven within ourselves. You see, not to make heaven on this earth. That's impossible. That will never happen here. In fact, you can tell that basically this planet is a mess. It's a hell. It's the lower world. We're told that it's a lower world, which is hell. We're not going to hell. We are already in hell, so to speak. But we all have been blessed in many ways to have the opportunity to dig deeper, you see. So I'll stop. This is again from the works of Phil Langdon. This is part 1 of the Ascension Code. And there are many things you'll go through. The symbols here also on this cover here are also important for you to understand. We'll go into that, which will be probably chapter 2. It's not that long of a book, but it's important, very important while you're here. There's no other greater thing to be here for, nothing else. Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you for listening, and you have a good evening, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Good night.